Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, July 22nd edition of the MMAOB Daily podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. Going to be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. I hope you guys had a good weekend. First and foremost, guys, follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. It's on our YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, check me out at Cherno.com, BJPen.com, MMAnews.com, and MMArings.net. I'm going to be recapping the UFC San Antonio card today. That's the focus of this podcast. I'll talk about any fight announcements that happened over the weekend tomorrow and any other sort of news. Although I do want to start off by talking about the John Jones thing last night. Very late last night, like actually this morning, I think it was like 1 a.m. I was on my Twitter and I saw Sub-Zero MMA, who's pretty good at just finding stuff on the internet about MMA and stuff like that, fight announcements and news. He tweeted that, John Jones is in trouble again. I clicked the article, I read it. The article's over at bjpen.com. I had to rewrite it for them. But yeah, apparently there was an alleged incident at a strip club back in April where John Jones was charged with battery. And yesterday he paid a cash bond. There apparently was a warrant for his arrest during the Thiago Santos fight, and he had no idea. According to the report, the address that the warrant was sent to, or the notice, was sent to, was wrong, and it bounced back. So John Jones, really had no idea, according to the report, and his representatives at Jackson Wink are vehemently denying any of the allegations from the waitress at the strip club. Bad look for John Jones, no doubt about it, but we don't have enough facts right now to talk about it. And yeah, everyone's saying, oh, well, John Jones is, not the most model citizen. And yeah, I get that. He's been in trouble a lot of times, but every incident's isolated when you think about things. So I just don't think it's fair really to comment about John Jones right now until we get more facts about it. And he's already on his social media denying that any of this stuff happened. So really, I just wanted to mention that because obviously it's the talk of the town right now. So it's definitely worth mentioning. But like I said, I want to focus this podcast on UFC San Antonio. So let's pull it out. Overall, I'll be honest, guys, this was not a good card. It was a pretty bad card, to be honest with you. Doing the play-by-play for this card was very tough. The first 9 fights went to decision. That's a lot of writing. And they weren't particularly good fights either. There was like really one good preliminary fight, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But overall, just a below average card. And I don't think anyone expected it to be this bad. There was a couple knockouts on the main card, which is cool, but overall, just a pretty bad card. That's all I can say. I mean, there was a lot of really just meh prelims, like fights that just are forgetful. Like I won't even remember them and I won't watch them again. So that's disappointing. It just, we were talking about this in the Sherdog chat. It's just another example of just the UFC doing too many events. I mean, even that card a couple weeks ago, the Durand and Milad card, a lot of people or that was last week, I should say, a lot of people were criticizing some of the fights on that card too in the prelims. At least the main card was good, and same with this one. But the preliminary cards now, it seems like, they're not UFC caliber fights. This is not what I expect from the UFC. I expect better fights in this. You can just put 2 guys together. You never know what's going to happen in the cage. But on this card, yeah, I was very let down by this card. I thought it was going to be a better card. But like I said, at least the main card delivered. The prelims were just terrible, though. 9 straight decisions, too, guys. I mean, that's a lot of decisions. Again, you never know what happens. You match 2 guys up. You could go to decision. It could be an exciting fight. Could a decision be a boring fight? I think for this card, a lot of the decisions were boring fights, and there was a lot of kind of bad calls by the judges too. So it was just overall a very subpar night and just a disappointing card in general. But I had to say that because it's the truth. A lot of people are going to say, well, you're complaining and stuff. And that's fair, but I am complaining because this wasn't a good card. And I had to do the whole play-by-play, which was a lot of work. And, it's a lot doing 9 straight decisions. Like I couldn't even get off the chair, go to the bathroom because the UFC for some reason had this bright idea of putting 7 preliminary fights in a 3-hour slot. And they had to start the show with Dominic Cruz talking for 50 minutes, which I don't understand why they need to do that. They have to get rid of that. It's just so silly. And again, I was talking to some other guys about that and they agree, because they ran into a problem in this card where the card went over length. It went past the top of the hour. That's not good. Anyways, the UFC is going to learn from this. ESPN will learn from it, hopefully, and they won't stuff 7 fights in 3 hours because that's a lot of fights. I think 12 fights a card is actually a good number. 13 fights is actually pushing it. The more I think about it, I used to love watching as many fights as I could, and I still do. But I think 13 fights for a 6-hour slot is quite a bit, personally. So we'll see what they do from this because I think this card is just an example of what can happen if the fights do go to decision. You can bank on fights ending inside distance. You don't expect all the fights to go distance, but if they do, you're going to run over time, and that's an issue. So that's something to bring up. But let's just talk about the card because I don't want to complain anymore. Start from the top and work our way down. Starting from the top, main event of the evening. Oh, and for picks, somehow I escaped with a 7-6 record, and I don't know how because man, there was a lot of upsets on this card, and a lot of people did really bad on this card. I made some bad calls myself, but winning picks percentage somehow, I have no idea, but it was a tough card to call. I think anyone watching this card, I doubt you guys did great. I mean, if you did, good for you as far as picks go. But from what I saw, a lot of people were like 500 or less on this card. So tough card to call because a lot of upsets. Like I said, 5 upsets, 1 fight was a pick 'em. So basically, like almost half the card ended in upsets. Those are always tough cards to pick, just like the card last week. Anyways, let's get right into it. Main event of the evening, Leon Edwards defeats Rafael Dos Anjos via unanimous decision, 50-45, 49-46, 49-46. I scored a 49-46 for Leon Edwards. I think I gave RDA the second round. I believe that's the other guys. The other guys at Shoroga as well. So great performance by Leon Edwards, in my opinion. Breakthrough performance. And, some people are saying this guy's boring. I don't really agree with that. I think he's just a smart fighter, very tactical. He did what he needed to do. He got the biggest win of his career. And this win over RDA pushes Leon Edwards into the elite at 170 pounds. Like, there's Kamaru Usman at the top. We all know that. And then right underneath him is Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. And right there, I think right with those guys now is Leon Edwards. He's right there. 10-2 record in the UFC, 8-fight win streak. Those are impressive numbers. Only 27 years old, too. So he's young, and he keeps getting better. Every fight we see this guy, he's showing new elements of his game. He was out-grappling RDA in this fight. I kind of figured that would happen if you guys read my breakdown. I think I called this fight to a T. It was probably one of the better breakdowns I had in this card because I was not right about a lot of the fights, how they would play out. But this one I was. It's exactly how I played out. Thought I would play out Edwards by decision. I thought he looked good. I think he's a great fighter, personally. So what's next for Leon Edwards? We have to wait and see what happens with Covington and Lawler. I think that's going to decide how that fight plays out. Will decide how the UFC kind of matches up Usman and Masvidal next. Because just say Covington goes and just wins a grinding decision over Lawler. Will they really give him a title shot over Masvidal, who just knocked out Ben Askren in 5 seconds? Probably not. So if I had to guess right now, I think Masvidal does actually have the slight edge for that title shot against Usman. But Covington could steal it back with a really good performance against Lawler. And the other guy who you guys left out will fight Edwards. I hope he does fight Masvidal because there's a lot of heat between those two guys. We saw what happened back at UFC London. Now we see what happens here. They're talking a lot of smack on social media. I'd love to see that fight. But I just have a feeling it's going to probably be Usman versus Masvidal and Covington, Lawler, the winner, probably Covington versus Edwards. I think that makes sense. And we'll see what happens, but they could easily just say, you know what, Covington's waited a long time for the shot. We'll just do him versus Usman. And then we'll do Masvidal versus Edwards as the co-main event in the same card. I think that probably does make some sense too. So I would hope that the UFC sticks those 2 fights in the same card because if there's an injury, you can easily slide one of the other guys up. So, like I said, great performance here by Leon Edwards. Very, very impressive. I'm nothing but impressed by this guy. And my dogs apparently are impressed by them too. I don't know if you can hear them barking, but they're going crazy for Leon Edwards. Rocky. Also, for RDA, I mean, this was kind of a bad loss for him because coming off that win over Kevin Lee, massive win for him, right? Big upset. Not an upset, but I shouldn't say upset at all. I think it was like a pick 'em. But that was a big win for him. That's what I meant to say. Sorry, guys. The dogs are really loud right now. Great win for Kevin Lee, over Kevin Lee there, but overall, 1-3 in his last 4 fights now. However, look at the 3 losses: Usman, Covington, and Edwards. So he's lost to literally the top, probably 3 of the top 5 guys. So RDA is not an elite guy anymore, I don't think, but he's just a step below them. He's the gatekeeper to the elite. And I think he showed that in this fight. He's still a tough out, very hard to finish. This guy pushes a really tough pace for 5 rounds, but he's beatable. And we saw what happened in this fight. Edwards beat him. Also, he's a little small for 170. We've seen what happens when he fights bigger guys like Edwards, like Usman, like Covington, gets taken down, gets controlled. That happened in this fight. And also, I think Edwards I think his just length and his ability to stay on the outside and just pick apart RDA. He had the reach advantage in this fight and the height advantage, and that did help him out as well. So overall, kind of a bad matchup for RDA. When you think about it, he did his best. He went the distance, but he got outpointed in pretty much every round, almost every round anyway. So again, great performance by Leon Edwards. I have a lot of respect for RDA. So for beating him basically on a clean sweep on the scorecards, that to me is really impressive. I'm a big fan of Leon Edwards, and I think he's going to go far in the sport. And for RDA, still a great gatekeeper, but I don't think he's a title contender at 170 pounds anymore. All right, moving down. Co-main event, Walt Harris knocks out Alexei Oleinik in just 12 seconds. Great performance by Walt Harris. Second straight performance of the night, winning performance by Walt Harris. Last fight against Sergey Spivak, 50 seconds. Now he knocks out Oleinik at 12. So he's on a 4-fight unbeaten streak. The one win over Arlovsky was overturned for some banned substance, but there was some controversy there. He barely served a suspension for it too. So he's actually won, like I said. And the fight with Godbeer, I mean, that was an illegal head kick. So you could technically say, well, he lost that fight, but you could say he's on a 5-fight unbeaten streak if that fight, if the referee, didn't call it a legal kick, which I think he should have. So it was a good call, but still, he basically beat Mark Godbeer too. Still, this guy is definitely looking good. 36 years old right now, but he's not fighting like it. Walt Harris is a guy that I always thought was really good coming up into the UFC. And he was so disappointing in his first couple of fights, losing to Rochelle, getting wrestled there, and then getting knocked out by Krylov. Bad losses. And then he went to Titan FC, got a win, and then since coming back, he's looked pretty good. So I think that Walt Harris has finally turned a corner in his career, and he's actually looking really, really good lately. Big ticket, they call him. And he's a guy, I don't think he could be a superstar by any means, but he could be a bit of a star, I think, because he knocks guys out. He's a big dude. This guy's an exciting fighter. So good for Walt Harris, man. He's really turned it around, and I'm glad to see that. And for Oleinik, getting knocked out in 12 seconds it's a bad look, and he's been knocked out in 2 straight fights now, over him in the last fight. We know how good his ground game is, but his chin is definitely not there anymore, and he's also 42 years old. I think he's going to retire. I mean, we saw some talk about that already. I think it's it for Alexei Oleinik. He could fight one more time. I doubt it. I think he's done. If he does fight, though, it's crazy, but what about if he went to Ryzen or Bellator and fought Fedor? I mean, that'd be kind of a cool fight, maybe a retirement fight for both guys, to the best Russian, or I guess he's Ukrainian, but still like to the best Russian area heavyweights of all time. That'd be a cool fight. Especially if it went to the ground, it'd be pretty sweet. So we'll see what happens, though. I think Oleinik's done, but yeah, I think Fedor versus Oleinik one day, that maybe like before they both retire, which I think will be soon, would be kind of cool, but we'll see what happens. He's probably done. Next up, another heavyweight bout. Greg Hardy knocks out Juan Adams in 45 seconds. Adams shot for a single leg, and Hardy stuffed it, and he just kind of pounded on Adams' head until Dan Berglier to stop the fight. So, I mean, really just a terrible performance by Juan Adams. I think he's going to get cut personally. The guy is 1-2 in the UFC, and he didn't look good at all in any of his fights. The Chris De La Roca fight, he got the 3rd-round win, but he struggled against the guy like Chris De La Roca, which is not a good sign. And then lost the decision to Arjun Buller, and now gets knocked out by Greg Hardy. And Greg Hardy actually closes the underdog, which I found very surprising because I actually like Greg Hardy a lot in this fight. Listen, I get it. The guy, I mean, you could just read up about his past. It's not good. And the guy's super cocky. If you watch his interviews, he's I don't know, man. I'm not trying to say about the guy. I don't want to get too much into like personal feelings about people. Like personally, like it's one of those things where the guy, he's going to be hated on for the rest of his career. But as far as a fighter goes, I think Greg Hardy's a pretty good fighter, honestly. And I think he's got a lot of potential, especially in the heavyweight division, where they've been dying to find someone young and charismatic like this guy. 30 years old, guys. He's young. 5-1 now in MMA. All 5 wins by knockout. 2-1 in the UFC. The Alan Crowder loss, we know what happened there. And since then, back-to-back KO wins over Smolyakov and Adams. And he actually learned from the Crowder one, which is kind of interesting. He actually learned from that fight. He's kind of a quick learner, I think. And then the guy's been barely doing this sport for 2 years now, and he's doing really well, So again, personal feelings aside, I think as far as an MMA prospect goes, Greg Hardy is actually a really good heavyweight prospect. The guy has a ton of power, ton of athleticism. He actually has pretty good takedown defense from what we've seen, which is crazy to think because he's barely been wrestling for that long. But his power is just a game changer. He can knock out probably anyone in that division if he connects clean. So he's got a lot to work on as far as defense goes, the striking defense and takedown defense, and just cardio and everything. We haven't even seen him take a shot really. So that's going to be interesting. Once he takes a shot, does he have a good chin? Does he get KO'd? I'm not sure yet. I know a lot of people are going to hope he gets KO'd by someone. And a lot of people are saying match him up with Walt Harris. I think Walt Harris deserves a top 10 opponent, if not a top 5 opponent after that win over Oleinik. Like 12 seconds over a guy like Oleinik, that's a big win. So I would give Walt Harris someone higher ranked. I think for Harris or for Hardy, keep building him up slow. At this point, like there's a lot of guys at heavyweight around the top 10 that he could fight. There aren't booked, but I don't think they need to rush him into that. I think take your time with Greg Hardy. I'm not 100% sure. Let me just take a look at who would be available. I mean, I'll take a look at the top 15, but again, I don't know if that's the right call right now. Like he's not ranked right now. And yeah, you could. I mean, you could do Greg Hardy versus like Tai Tuivasa, I guess. Like that fight wouldn't be terrible, I guess. I mean, Tuivasa's not good looking either, and Greg Hardy actually could win that fight. But I feel like they're going to give him someone unranked and just keep building him slowly. So we'll see what happens there. But guys, like, listen, I feel the same way about like most people do about Greg Hardy as a person, but as a fighter, I do think he's actually a pretty good prospect. So we'll see what happens here with Greg Hardy. But I think that UFC actually might have found potentially someone that could be a star for them because, for better or worse, this guy gets clicks, he gets eyeballs on him, and people want to hear what he has to say, even though they hate him. It's kind of weird, but it's the truth. Next up, lightweight bout, Dan Hooker versus James Vick. Dan Hooker knocked out James Vick in 2 minutes, 33 seconds. Okay, so this one, I really regret not changing my pick because I saw the weigh-ins and James Vick looked absolutely terrible. There is no way this guy can ever fight at lightweight again. Cuts way too much weight, so drained. Never fight lightweight again. This was a bad call on my part. I picked Vic. I don't know why. Dan Hooker looks so good. And I guess the reason why was because Dan Hooker just come off a beat down versus Edson Barboza, but didn't show in this fight. He looked amazing, very aggressive, and knocks out Vic. So good for Dan Hooker, man. He's won 5 of his last 6 fights since moving to lightweight. The only loss to Edson Barboza. That is not a bad loss. So 5 of 6 wins at lightweight, and all of the wins by stoppage. So this guy's a beast, and he's a great fighter to watch. And afterwards, he called out Al Iaquinta, and he wants to fight him in that UFC 243 card, which is Ruben for Melbourne. That's the Adesanya versus Whitaker card. And I believe Adesanya is a good friend of his. So I personally would love to see that fight. Great call by Dan Hooker. Iaquinta versus Hooker. Sign me up. Great fight. And like I said, for Vic, time to move up to 170, buddy. There's no way you can fight 155 anymore, man. It's just too much of a weight cut, and it hurts the guy's chin because he's been KO'd brutally in 2 of his last 3 fights. And actually, he's been KO'd 3 times in the UFC in brutal fashion. Next up, just an absolutely terrible fight between Alexander Hernandez and Francisco Trinaldo. Horrendous fight. One of the worst fights I've ever seen. I'd be honest, it was horrible. This was not a fun fight to watch, not a fun fight to score. Really, you flip a coin and that's who could have won the fight. I think I scored for Hernandez. I don't care. A lot of people scored for Trinaldo, but I don't really care either way. Both guys didn't do anything in this fight. Trinaldo stood in the middle of the octagon and did nothing, and Hernandez just circled around him and did nothing. Terrible fight. Bad performance by both guys. Don't know what happened here. Hernandez, at least at 26, he's got time to improve. I hope he learns from this fight because this was an awful performance, and I think people will not want to watch him fight after this, which is disappointing because he's young and he was exciting before this one, but terrible. And then for Trinaldo, he's lost 3 of his last 5 fights, and at 40 years old, he's almost 41. Next month he'll be 41. I think he's definitely nearing the end of his career, unfortunately, because the guy's actually had a really underrated career. He's a good fighter, but bad performance, and I do think this is showing this fight showed that he's got some signs of decline. Opening up the main card, Andrei Arlovski beats Ben Rothwell by unanimous decision. This was oh man, what a great performance by Andrei Arlovski. I'm shocked. I can't believe he looked this good. I don't remember the last time Andrei Arlovski looked this good. It's been a long time. Like, he did have a couple wins a few years ago against Struve and Albini back in 2017, 2018, but he hasn't looked like this good, I guess, since like probably the Travis Brown fight back in 2015. So it's been years since we've seen him. And as far as putting together a complete performance for 50 minutes, this is the best he's looked in like probably a decade. I mean, this was an amazing performance from Andrei Arlovski. His boxing looked really sharp. Just beat Ben Rothwell to punch every shot. Pretty much evaded all the power punches. He looked fantastic, man. I mean, I'm not someone that believes in Andrei Arlovski anymore. He's 40 years old. He's been knocked out so many times, lost so many fights, but I got to give the guy credit, man. He looked incredible in this fight. Great performance by Andrei Arlovski. And for Ben Rothwell, his chin held up again. The guy, we all know how tough he is, but he lost the rematch 11 years later. So Arlovski's got his number, and Ben Rothwell has actually lost 3 straight fights now. Ben Rothwell is still a tough dude. I think he'll probably get another fight in the UFC. I mean, this was a pretty good fight. Of all the fights in the card, there's one in the prelims which was really good, and this one was probably, as far as like best fight goes, like not just like knockout, this is probably the best fight as far as excitement goes, because both guys really just stood in the pocket and traded, and it was fun to watch. They got tired of the round, but I mean, they were throwing leather, man. So both guys definitely need to be commended for their performances here, but Arlovski looked fantastic, and I'm curious to see who he gets next. I mean, the guy looked really good. And he's saying he wants a title shot, I think, but yeah, I don't see that happening. But definitely a top 15 opponent. He probably does get ranked after this fight. All right, let's go through the prelims here. Featherweight bout, Alex Caceres for Steven Peterson. Caceres wins unanimous decision, 3-27, 29-28, 29-28. I scored his fight for Steven Peterson. He won rounds 1 and 3. I have no idea how the judges score this for Caceres. There's no way he won this fight. Peterson won the first and third round. Bad call by the judges. Terrible call, in my opinion. I mean, what else could Steven Peterson have did? And it's crazy one judge had 30-27 for Caceres. Like, Steven Peterson basically had him in a rear naked choke position for like 2 minutes in the first round. How do you not win that round on the judges' scorecard? So weird. And the third round, Caceres threw a kick at one point. Peterson caught it, put him down, and started beating him with ground and pound from the top. I thought he won that round too. So to me, this was a terrible decision by the judges. I thought Peterson won. Having said that, he's 1-3 now in the UFC. He might get cut. I think this was a loser gets cut fight, so I think that's probably it for Peterson in the UFC, unfortunately, because the guy actually is a scrappy guy, but can't get the job done for whatever reason, although I do think it was a robbery in this fight. And for Caceres, he edged it out, but man, another guy he's 500. He's like, I think he's 10-10 and won no contest. I'm pretty sure that's his record in the UFC, so not a good record. Next up, Raquel Pennington defeats Irina Aldana via split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. I scored for Pennington too. I thought she won. I think it was rounds. What was it? 1 and 3, I think, or 2 and 3. I can't remember exactly. I think 2 and 3. But yeah, I thought she won the fight. I was hoping Aldana won because I picked her, but you know what? I had no money on this one, so no big deal either way. But yeah, for Pennington, she looked pretty good in this fight. I think her grappling, her top control. In the third round, I think Aldana made a really tactical error. She was looking for that calf slicer thing, and she ended up on bottom for way too long, and that's not a good look for the judges. So she almost won the fight, but didn't, and it's unfortunate because I think the UFC wanted to have some new blood at that 135, but Aldana's she's just not good enough to be a top contender, unfortunately. She's an okay fighter, but she's not an elite talent. And for Pennington, I mean, she gets back in the win column, but I don't see her contending for a belt anytime soon either. Next up, light heavyweight bout, Klidson Abreu defeats Sam Alvey, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Good call by the judges here as well. Klidson Abreu definitely won this fight. He outpointed Sam Alvey. Not a great fight, just kind of a fight. Honestly, like he just, he did what he had to do, but it wasn't exciting by any means. And Sam Alvey, again, another guy, 3 straight losses now. Does he get cut? He puts on good fights, but maybe. So we'll see what happens. They did mention during the broadcast this guy recently, I think him and his wife just recently adopted another child. She's got 5 kids now. I think he probably hopes the UFC keeps him around because that's a lot of most. If he does get released, though, I was thinking PFL would be a good spot, I think, for Sam Alvey, especially. I mean, this guy actually would be great in PFL or back to Bellator where he fought many years ago. We'll see what happens, but yeah, 3 straight losses. You can't assume that the UFC is going to keep you around. Although the guy, he always answers the call. He always puts on, I think, for the most part, good fights. So maybe they feel bad for him. They give him one more fight, but if they let him go, I wouldn't be surprised either. Because I think you got to be a guy like Klidson Abreu, who really has not shown much in the UFC so far. Next up, Jennifer Maia defeats Roxanne Modafferi by decision, 30-27 across the board. I mean, she missed weight, so there's an asterisk next to this fight. Like they were 5-6 in the flyweight division. Do they really swap positions? She missed weight. I mean, I picked Maia. I thought she won the fight clearly, but when you miss weight by that 3 pounds, I mean, that's a lot of weight to miss by. So to me, it was kind of an advantage. Like she just stopped cutting weight, and then at least she got fined because Roxy deserved that extra money. But definitely, you gotta feel bad for Roxy. You're fighting an overweight opponent and a much bigger opponent, and then losing by decision, and pretty much kills any hope that Roxy was ever going to title shot. Although I never thought she would. But for Maia, you know what? Like if you look at her resume, she's actually won 8 of the last 9 fights. So that's not bad. And 1 loss to Carmouche in the UFC, in her UFC debut, but otherwise she's looked pretty good. So Maia's definitely a decent fighter, but gotta get her weight in order. Just going through the next couple, there was 3 bantamweight bouts to open the card. Ray Borg defeats Gabriel Silva by decision. Good for Ray Borg getting the win here. He needed that win again to save his job in the UFC. Gets just a grappling based win. He kind of just out grappled this guy, and that's what he's known for. So good for Ray Borg. And then opening up the card was Felipe Colares getting a huge upset win over Domingo Pilarte by split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. Great performance by Colares, and definitely got to give this guy credit because I did not think he was going to win this fight, and he pulled it off as a plus 325 underdog. And the one fight I did skip because I want to talk about this one a little bit longer was I think, best fight in the card, Mario Batista versus Jin Tucson. And this one fight tonight, and I'm glad it did. I'm really glad the UFC's not just going to the main cards for these for the bonuses. Like they could have easily gave it to Arlovsky and Rothwell, and no one would have said anything. These guys deserved it. These guys had a massive slugfest. It reminded me of that Eric Spicely and Deron Wynn fight from a few weeks ago, where the guys just stood and banged like early on the card, and not a lot of people saw it, but just a great fight. And this reminded me of that. Just 2 guys that really wanted to get the win, and Batista definitely, he won the fight by unanimous decision. He deserved it, but Son was trying the whole time to win the fight too. So great performance by both guys. I'm glad they won the money. You know, our loss game Rothwell, yeah, they could have won too, but they have so much money, those guys. These guys actually needed the money. They actually did. These guys are making, I think, 10 and 10 or 12 and 12. They really needed the 50K bonus. Both guys left it out on the line. Just a tremendous performance by both guys. I really enjoyed this fight. It was, to me, the most enjoyable fight in the card. And I was really hoping the rest of the card would play out like that, but it obviously didn't. By the way, Jin San, 2 UFC fights, 2 fighter nights. Peter Yan and now Mario Batista. So good for Jin San. The guy's awesome. And I hope he gets on that Korean card at the end of the year. That should be good. So that's it, guys. Just wanted to break down that card. Like I said, overall, I had below average card, way too many decisions, and fights that just were forgettable. And you know, that's the one thing I'll say about the UFC these days. I used to watch like the cards back to front, and then I'd watch them again. Like I'd tape them and watch them a couple times. I find I rarely do that anymore because it's just not one. There's too many fights, but there's too many forgettable fights. The UFC, they're trying their best to do the matchmaking, but you know, when you go to a new city every weekend, you're gonna have events like this where it's just like guys that are not UFC caliber. I think this is one of those cards that the UFC is going to look at and start cutting guys because they have all those guys coming for the contender series. These were not great fights. You're going to see guys, like a lot of the guys in the prelims will be definitely released, I think. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. But yeah, again, below average card. And hopefully, crossing my fingers, UFC 240 this weekend is a lot better. I think it will be, but we'll see what happens. Guys, thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. This podcast is available at MMAOB.com and on our YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe. Check me out at bjpen.com, sherdog.com, MMAnews.com, and MMArings.net. Check my Twitter out. I always post my articles. Check those sites out. There's tons of content always every day, guys. So appreciate you tuning in again. Thank you guys for checking it out. I hope you had a good weekend, and I'll be back tomorrow for the Tuesday edition of the show. And I should mention, I am going to be doing a podcast with Cole Shelton breaking down UFC 240, but it'll be later in the day because I'm attending a funeral tomorrow morning. So I have to do that, but later in the day, I think in the afternoon, myself and Cole will break down UFC 240. I will still do this morning podcast tomorrow morning, probably like a little bit earlier than usual, but probably like 9 o'clock, maybe between 9 and 10. But so I want to mention that it's programming notes, so I had to mention that. But I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good day.